Hi, Christian. I just wanted to give a quick overview of some specific details about the Advanced Deductive Tasting Branching video script. I went ahead and added on page 1 of the document a quick description of what this is actually going to be used for, just to give the videographer and then Tim as well a little more clarity and vision. And then also I did a really quick estimate as to how much video would actually result from this. It's hard to say for sure because there's so many notes interjected in between each of the short snippets. There's 26 short scripts, and it's going to be somewhere between 45 and 70 minutes of video if he decides to do all of it. There's some pieces that I've put notes throughout on saying that I can make it text in the course as opposed to video. So we'll leave that up to you guys when you're shooting. Then I also put some challenges and tips in. I think Tim was a little bit put off by the idea of recording every single one of the responses because it seemed like it would be tedious and almost annoying to students perhaps. It is going to feel repetitive during the shoot if you decide to do it in video format. However, for students, they won't actually hear all the responses, so it won't be repetitive to them. So I have some tips here, like trying to reset his tone and energy before doing the next response. And then, remembering that this is really going to be the heart of the advanced tasting course. It's going to set it apart from the current deductive tasting course, and it could be a tool that could be used outside of the online course altogether, giving students like a really unique experience working side by side with a master of wine and going through that tasting process. Helping Tim kind of put himself in that position as if the camera, across from him is actually a student who he's walking through that tasting process, and what would he say to them? And then having the responses that are in the script right now reflect what he would actually say to the student. So if he wants to, on the fly or written, make some changes based on that, that'd be great. We start with a quick introduction, and then there's the setting glassware and tasting technique section that I feel like would be really cool to put into a more interactive setting. It's already in the deductive tasting course, and I can make this just a page within the new course. But since we're trying to add value to this version, I thought it'd be cool to have kind of a question answer. So do they have adequate lighting, for instance? If they click yes, then he'll give this. If they click no, then he'll give this, and so on and so forth. So we have one of those for setting glassware and tasting techniques as well. I'd like to give a quick overview of the way that the scripts are set up for each of the 4 wines. So we have the 2 white wines first and then the 2 red wines last. And in each of them, if you take a look at the outline, what you'll find is there's a video for a quick introduction, which in each case is really just a sentence right now. And then I have a suggestion to Tim to write in some additional description or to just add in as you're recording, potentially, showing the bottle, looking at the label and helping them kind of read through the label and identifying the most important components of the label that will help set them up for success for the tasting to come. Then after that, we move into sight, and you'll find that I've got a couple notes in a box up above, but then most of my notes are going to be found in these red brackets. And anything that's in the red bracket, there's no need to read. These are notes, general notes and ideas that popped into my head as I was visualizing what this could potentially look like in the branching scenario. So for each of these, I say it'd be great if he's doing the things that he's asking them to do. So for instance, when he's saying, hold the glass by its stem and look at it against the white background, being able to get a shot of that would be great. And then as you get into the questions themselves, there's some things that you can kind of consider depending on the time that you have and how you want to approach this. So in clarity, for instance, I suggest that he be shot holding the glass against the white background. You could add some text and writing behind the glass so that you can demonstrate clear versus hazy versus cloudy. Once those are recorded, I can actually overlay that on the responses that he's giving for each of the potential answers. So in some cases throughout the script, you'll find that for each answer, there's one response. But then what I noticed as I went through this and hoped to potentially save him some time, there are certain areas where the same response is given for multiple answer options. So whenever that was the case, what you'll find is I've combined those potential responses in the red bracket, and then I only have that response a single time. And hopefully that'll save you some time. And then when I go in, or my team goes in to make these changes and actually create the videos, I'll know that I'll just use that particular video 3 different times for those 3 different branching scenarios. So as we progress into the first wine, you're going to notice that this very first wine actually has a lot more detail in it than the remaining 3. The first example of that is that we actually go through a quick review of the different faults. We won't do that again. That'll be the only time that it's done, and then they can always refer back to this when they're going through the other tastings. So if you scroll down to conclusions or use your handy dandy outline, and I come to my conclusions, what you'll find is that in this first wine, I've actually added a little bit of text and some reference to cause and effect, since that was something that was really important for the advanced version of the course. And I've pulled the text from the course, from the original deductive tasting course that related to cause and effect. And I've placed that text right before each question for the initial conclusions. There's a little note out to the side that just says you can delete this if you want to. But if you did want to record this via video, I would just place that video before the question. If you didn't and you wanted it to be text, which is also fine, I can place that text before the video as well. If you don't want to use these, just strike through them or reply to the comment that you don't want to use them, and then that way I know what I need to actually pull in as text. And then up in the tips, I mentioned build on the feedback in such a way that it reflects what you would say, what Tim would say to a potential client or individual who's doing a tasting with him. I wasn't extremely specific as to when that could happen because I wanted him to make that call as he was recording. But I can give a couple examples of how you could potentially build on this or make the response a little bit more interesting. So for instance, in multiple places throughout the course, there are questions that have a response like, not quite, smell the wine again. A lot of those questions come into play when there's multiple options for responses, which could lead to way too many branches that we need to narrow down. Sometimes it's also because there wasn't information about why it wasn't those answers, so all of the response options were relatively simple. But in short, the way that you can kind of bring one of these to life and not feel completely weird by recording literally, not quite, smell the wine again, is you can expand on that a little bit and say, not quite, and then show them, just reinforce how they're supposed to be smelling the wine, maybe remind them of a tip perhaps that will help them achieve the right answer, but without giving it away completely. A close-up of him, swirling the wine before he smells, or any other tips that you want to give in each of the times when the feedback is relatively short. I think that'd be really great. I think that about sums it up. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm more than happy to call in during the recording if you need some clarification on anything. Good luck and happy recording.